They were going to put the title on him, but they wanted to run that final little angle with him and Garvin just to get him ready. And they used to go to a bar somewhere in Charlotte. I forgot the name of it. And I'm not a bar guy, so I never went to the bar. But after the matches, if it was short, say they were in Greenville, South Carolina, which is like 90 minutes away. So you would get back before 12 o'clock. You'd go down and you have a drink or two, and you would go home. So he went down there, and I don't know if he had a drink or not. I can't say. I'm sure he was tested, but I don't think he was over the limit. What happened was he had bought that new what was it?
Porsche 911 Turbo, bright red.
Yeah, and I used to see it when I would go down to the office for interviews. It would sit out in the parking lot. Beautiful car, a lot of power. But when he went around the corner, he hit that water, and he started jet planing or
hydroplaning.
And he started sliding around and around and around. He hit that tree, demolished the tree. I don't know how he lived. I really don't. Because it was front page news because it happened early enough in the night that he could make the headlines the next morning. And he went to the hospital, and I don't know how long he was in the hospital before he got out. It was months and months and months before he got out. And if it happened today, they would do a GoFundMe. They didn't have that then. But what Jim Crockett did, and Jim Crockett was a good guy. They paid good money. Because Jim Crockett knew that the guys, they bust their ass up and down the road. So you'd have to pay them well. And the trips, they weren't that bad, but what they come up with was, and I think they had like 40 guys or 35 guys in the territory, and everybody put their name on a list, say, deduct $25 from my check this week or $50 from my check this week. And whatever it was, some guys would give 100, some guys would give more. But and whatever that was, Crockett would match it, and that's how they paid Magnum TA in the early days of his injury. So we had 20 guys paying $50 a week. That's $1,000 right there. Match it, that's $2,000, and it may have been over that. So he might have been making more money hurt than he was actually wrestling. But he was really, really messed up. And I hate to see somebody end up like that. But he had said that he had planned to retire at 30, which I put this much stock in. Wrestlers don't quit.
Especially if you're on top as well and you're 30.
You don't.
Do you know what? I don't want these $500,000 a year things,
Oh, screw this. Screw getting that $50,000 pay-per-view main event payoff. Screw that. Of course. But it's a good thing to shoot for. But I believe that just as much as, I don't know, that was just him talking, I think. And a sports reporter called me in Charlotte about probably 3 days after it happened. And he was saying, he says, of all the athletes in Charlotte, they've never seen a response like that for anybody in the public eye in Charlotte ever. The phone board at the TV station, 8,000 to 10,000 calls
to the hospital. In fact, from fans, they had to turn off the switchboard, I believe.
Well, And they kept it secret what room he was in. And on the floor, if somebody got off and it looked like there were several of them, they immediately put security on the floor, and because they were just overrun.
I'm going to go through, because we've not really said the specifics of the accident. So, as we did say before, the Porsche 911 Turbo, while Terry was driving it, he was going around a slight curve. He drove through some standing water. It was a bad day of weather in the evenings after the matches. This is after the Greensboro Coliseum, North Carolina. And the car started to turn one way. He steered into the turn, and then the car just lost control completely, hit a telephone pole so hard it ripped the pole in half. He is still... his C5 vertebrae, he describes as exploded, and he is still technically a quadriplegic because he has no full strength in any of his limbs, I think. But he comes back as a commentator, a colour commentator, and also he's involved in a couple of sort of like brief physical skirmishes as well. Do you remember when he came back in that era? And in fact, actually, in Dark Side of the Ring, he's actually brought out to an arena. I don't know which arena it was, his first public appearance since. Yeah, do you remember? Were you there that night?
I think while he was recovering, I think I left. And the reason I left was when I booked myself in Charlotte, that's where I wanted to work. I wanted to work the Carolinas and Virginia. And they got this wild hair up their ass that they were going to take over Florida and run it as an appendage to Charlotte. They was going to call it Charlotte South. And I'm thinking, that's stupid. Why don't you just call it Florida? Charlotte South would just damn confuse people. And I had just left Florida maybe a year or so earlier, and I knew and when business is down in Florida, it's down. And they didn't mention anything about any guaranteed money, any guaranteed payoff. I said, screw it. I'm not going, so I took off.
Do you know what I always found confusing? And I'm sure this is probably just me because I'm not from the United States. But the Mid-South Coliseum is in Memphis. But the Mid-South Territory has nothing to do with Tennessee. I always found that for years when I was trying to learn all these like little territory systems. I always found that so confusing.
Yep, that is confusing. And a lot of difference in the territories too. But the style was kind of the same.
In fact, just a brief word on Magnum TA. Do you think he would have made a good world champion from what you saw?
Well, I think so. Oh, yeah. People loved him. I may have been talking a little earlier about connecting to fans.
Yes.
He had that ability to connect, like Stan Lane did with the females.
With the women.
No, but he had that connectability. And I would take somebody with connectability any day of the week and twice on Sunday, as the old saying goes. I'll take them anytime over just a pure ringmaster. Because then you can tell a story with these guys. And if they feel like they know that character, and you can convince them that, hey, it's something that happened to the talent, but it could happen to you too, you got them. So, see, that's what Dusty's biggest appeal was. They thought they knew Dusty. See, Dusty never met a stranger anyway. You know, you walk up to Dusty and Dusty, he'll smile and put his hand on you. People jump off a two-story building for Dusty because he had that ability to connect and talk to them. So they thought they knew Magnum. Magnum to them was family. Dusty was family. And when you do something to family, you do it to everybody in that family. And that's how he connected. But I thought he would have been a very, very good champion. And he'd have been they really wanted champions to be heels because, and the belief being that the people will pay to see the good guy win. They won't pay to see the bad guy win. So he would have to be wrestling faces for it to join, but if he was a face too, you would run into a little bit of a problem.
David,
but it wasn't bad for him to say or to have the acknowledgement that he was a world champion.
David Crockett suggested that if Magnum TA had won the title, maybe the WWF versus NWA war may have turned out at least a little bit differently. Do you think Magnum TA would have been a game changer to that level? Because Ric Flair wasn't a game changer to that level. You know, it still started falling off the rails around 87, and that was more, you know, partly managerial problems along with booking problems and stuff. But if Ric Flair couldn't, could Magnum TA have changed the game there?
Well, it's a good comment. It's a good saying, but I don't know if he would have changed it or not. That all boils down to TV production and TV, local TV in an area. Mm-hmm. Plus, WWF had Raw. And if they had local TV, of course, I just thought that WWF TV was more slickly produced than a regional TV. But hey, Charlotte, Mid-Atlantic had good TV. Mm-hmm. They really did.
A slight correction, would have been Superstars at that time rather than Raw. But having said that,
when did they get Raw?
93.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Superstars went from 86 to 97, actually. But anyway, that being said, we've got...
what's Mo saying? Never let facts get in the way of a good story.
Exactly, and you've told that to our 48 million regular weekly listeners as well.